Misha here, and let's do an AR video. I promise you, this is one you haven't seen before. Well, chances are. At first, it might look like an SP1 or an XM16 601, 602 type clone. But real quick, you're going to notice things that just don't line up. Now, for those who remember their 80s, this is an Italian Armi Jager, Jager, G-A-G-E-R, AP74. Okay, you might be saying, well, I've seen those in stores. You know, they were available for 10, 15 years on the market. That's correct. Except this one is not the version you're thinking of. The AP74 was in 22 LR. This is an AP74 in 7.65 32 auto, the Browning cartridge. Not many of these came in. What an interesting thing that came across my desk. And so I thought I would share it with you fine folks out here at the cabin this evening. How about that? Test firing of the AP74. So if you're a fan of kind of retro ARs, imports, rarities, 22s, you know, hang out. Let's chat. As always, if you could, please do like, share, subscribe. I'd love to hear in the comments what you think, if you have a 22 or maybe even a 32, your experiences. And yes, they've done other cool ones too, like they did the AP85. Yeah, they've done kind of clones, in quotations, of the FAMAS, of the Galil, of the L85 in 22. But being at 32, a centerfire round, it's kind of odd, and one has to ask why. Then again, sometimes the answer is, why not? So, please, if you could, support us on Patreon, do a super thanks, and with that, we'll just dive in. Gonna start off testing it with some PPU 71 grain. Just put a few rounds in. First go, because I don't know how ammo sensitive these are. Really not very. You don't have an automatic hold open, but you have a manual and you can push up on the side if you need to for like range safety. The AP74, as I said, was made in Italy. Some want to say they were military trainers. No, these were always civilian guns, European, American, whatever. Because 22 LR rimfire, even back in the 80s, it was less restricted in the imports, and after the 89 import ban, it was easier to bring over 22s and centerfires. But 32 caliber 7.65 is popular in European nations where military calibers weren't. And it's kind of odd because there are not many 32 rifles on the planet ever made. So this is one of just a few. I don't know how many were made in Italy and sold throughout Europe, but I can tell you that very few of the 32s came into America, because one does have to ask why. Now the 22s, they appeared in the 70s and would kind of keep coming in through the very early 90s, even just a little bit past the assault weapons ban of imports in 89. Then the company, Armi Jager, would go out of business around 93, 94 anyway. They'd been operating since just right after World War II. This one is a EMF import out of California. They brought over the 22 LR, and they seem to be the only company that ever brought over the 32. And they were one of the earlier importers. Then you see Mitchell's, and those only seem to be the 22s. They seem to be one of the last importers, again, just the 22s. So the 32s should have the EMF mark. 22s can have, you know, whatever. How many came in? Who knows? I could not find extensive numbers. it does not seem like more than one batch of 32s came in, so 500, maybe 1,000 at most. I could see why they wouldn't sell super well. Now the 22 LR versions, they sell pretty well. So I don't know, 10, 20,000 of those could have easily come in because they were very affordable. And this is a metal and synthetic gun. In broad strokes, it does a really good job of replicating not just your generic M16 AR15, but really you can tell they copied the SP1. It has the same overall length, about 39 inches, with a 20-inch barrel. Not chrome lined though, I'm sure. And it is a little bit lighter because of the simplified internals we'll talk about in a bit. Probably 5.5 pounds. And to be fair, the SP1 is not very heavy either. It is on a slab upper and lower, although you can tell the carry handle sight, it's much thicker. This is not steel, of course. It's not, ordnance grade aluminum or other kind of alloy. It's just kind of pot metal. All right, loaded a few more in the mag this time, since our first effort was A-okay. Did I not pick up? It might not have picked up. Please tell me I didn't just break my firing pin. One reason I said they definitely looked at an SP1, it has the double-headed screw in the front, just like an SP1, in addition to the no-fence lower. And just kind of the overall general look, no forward assist. It does have a working port door here, which is kind of cool. Same AR charging handle, but it is chunkier, kind of again with the upper. The safety is here. It's AR style, but it's reversed. Safe. Fire. As opposed to that. Now, I believe some of the 22 versions had more of a push button type safety, but I could be misremembering on that. The furniture is very SP1, triangle handguards, obviously no gas tube. They actually feel quite good. I'd say these feel more authentic than a lot of your modern pre-production ones. It's an A1 style grip, but notice there's no hole down here, and I don't believe this furniture is directly interchangeable. This ring is just cosmetic. It does not push down. The buttstock is E1 inspired with a swing swivel that moves and a ribbed butt plate, but it's not the same kind of rubber, no trapdoor, so a little bit of a hybrid there. Moving back to the barrel, one thing I think is kind of neat is it does have the no flashing on the front sight base. Of course, that's because it's a cast part, not a machined part, but it does give that authentic original look. And you'll notice that there aren't pins here. It's held on from the bottom with essentially a set screw. Keep in mind this is not a gas block, so it doesn't really need to be all that secured. It does have a sling swivel, and it does have a bayonet lug thing. I say that because it looks the part. Here is a Colt bayonet, well, Colt marked, Icorn made, and it starts to line up, but you very quickly realize that this lug is just too chunky, too wide. And I did try a few other bayonets, including European spec ones, and a few go on partially, but at least on my example here, it's just a cosmetic lug. One thing that isn't cosmetic, we have a 3-prong flash hider, and it is removable. And I kind of saved what I think is the most unique for last, the magazine right here. If you have one of the 22s, you know where I'm going. Loaded a few more this time. Okay. Now the real trick is resisting the instinct to hit this to drop the mag. Kind of at least on the same plane, I suppose. Whew, thank goodness the firing pin wasn't broken. Pressing the catch here does nothing. It's a dummy. This is a faux 20 round mag that is part of the receiver casting. But you'll notice a small button down here. That is actually our mag release. You can see kind of the dummy in there. And this uses a very Italian looking mag. Very European, with the cutout on the side on one to visualize it. Notch down here. It is a 9+1 capacity. I believe the 22s are 10+1, but 32 a little fatter, and probably just for restrictions in certain areas. There you go. And getting this lined up to go back in, I'm sure if you get experience with it, you can get better, but it's not what I'd consider a quick insert. Drops out pretty good, but not quick. And I don't believe that's a mag that's used by anything else, but I very well could be wrong. It kind of reminds me of some early Beretta mags, but again, longer than they would have been. And that is one of the Achilles heels of this gun. Spare mags are very difficult to find for the 22 LR, and nigh on impossible for the 32 because of how few are in the country. And that is kind of a walkthrough with our exterior. But we do have a hollow pin back here. And it does disassemble quite similar to an AR, but then the internals are radically different. So what I'm going to do, we're going to go into the table because this pin is not captive. I got this screw. And just in case I drop parts, it won't be in the leaves. And we'll look at what makes this tick. It's pretty simple, as you'd imagine. We have a pin in the back, but it's just kind of a pin. And so I'm just going to press it out with something soft. In this case, it is a broken chopstick. Yeah, just a non-captive pin. Even the earliest 601s had a captive rear pin. But I will say, throughout shooting it, it never started to walk out, so it's good enough, frankly. It hinges open, just like any other AR. And, like the original SP1, it has a double-headed screw in front. Now we can separate the two, just as you would on anything else. This front is a little sticky. Gotta walk it out a bit. But there you go. So let's check out what makes it tick inside. Okay. Alright. Very gentle recoil as you'd expect. I will say, quite nice, consistent ejection. It's not stovepiping, failing to extract, failing to eject. It's putting them in the chamber and flinging them out very consistently. First, the lower. It kind of looks like a 9mm AR. It's got the extractor there. Interestingly, it does have the feed ramp built in to the magwell area. The hammer is a little different. Definitely, again, not interchangeable. Looks to be a cast part. And if you look on the inside, first you'll notice the receiver walls are a little thicker than we're used to. Second, while the outside has kind of a baked-on enamel paint, the inside is a much more matte finish, almost grayish. Also, the buffer. We do have a buffer back here. It's got a hole in it, and there's no pin in the front. to pop it out like on an AR. I assume to get it out, we're not going to do it, you need to loosen the Phillips screws on the butt plate and pull your stock off, and it comes out that way, I guess. The pistol grip, it has a screw. Trigger guard, no surprise, it's just cast as part of the whole lower assembly. And you'll notice our hold open device is actually not part of the lower either. Rather, it's fully contained in the upper receiver, meaning it has no way to trip with the magazine that I know of. One kind of, I guess, neat thing is it does have a working dust cover port door. This just falls straight out the back, the bolt does, and your handle comes out much like on a standard AR. No gas key, gas rings, you just literally have a screw up here, and that interacts with your handle. Simple, small extractor. Firing pin is contained here. It is spring-loaded though, I'll give it that. It's just one simple machined cylinder. Well, I say machined. I believe it's a type of casting too, but I could be wrong on that. The charging handle definitely is a cast part. You can tell by how thick it is. Spring-loaded there. Definitely simplified. And if the lower looked a little thick, the upper absolutely does. Check that out. The lugs, how big they are. Look at these walls. The surface area there. It's definitely built. Of course, your carry handle area. Funny, it does have a small hole in the top. And it does have, I presume, well, I don't know if that wheel actually works or not. I didn't try it. It has a screw in it, so it may adjust. It does have 2-position peep, though. And again, if you want to take off your handguard, you've got to actually remove the screw here and ride this all off, which we're not going to do. And notice the barrel has more of a matte finish. The upper receiver, like the lower, has the paint finish on the outside, but the inside, again, even under the line here, is kind of a matte gray. So what's going on, and what's this gun really made out of? The lower receiver and the upper are both die cast. Seems to be a zinc alloy like Zamac, literally pot metal, but not like we say pot metal, like literally the kind of things that could be cast into pots. That's why it's overly thick. Keep in mind, most of what Army Jager did were 22s. The 32 is kind of the oddball. And then, so it was fine for that. And it gave them a way to make a bunch of different replicas. As I said, they did AKs, Galils, the L85, the FAMAS, even the AR15. And so they could just produce them relatively cheaply. At this time, Italy was kind of, that's kind of their function in Europe. Quality stuff at a good price point. And it's fine. It works out fine. Other things like the bolt, I mean, it looks to be a type of cast material, but it could be bar stock of some type. If you know, let me know. The charging handle absolutely is a cast component. However, the barrel surprises me just a bit. Today, when we see 22 replicas, they usually have a 2-piece barrel with like a steel liner inside and then an outer surface made out of something else. This isn't. This does seem to be a carbon steel barrel through and through. It's just a single piece, a single tube. The finish, while it is very just kind of matte, does seem to be a type of salt bluing. The reason it's not real shiny is it just wasn't super finished, but it is just a single piece barrel made of actual steel. It would not be nitrided, would not be chrome lined. It'd just be rifled, whether we're talking the 22 or the 32 version here. There you go. And it just attaches into the receiver. Now it is threaded. This is a removable flash hider, and the thread patterns seem to be a 12 millimeter, like a 12 by 1.5. It's not half by 28, but it could be adapted to half by 28. I looked online, and there were some conversions to put more modern devices on. But it's cool that it is threaded, removable, no big deal there. And it does seem like this whole barrel style was interchangeable through several of their models. They would just cut it to size and profile it differently to fit different receiver types as needed, keeping costs down and variety up. So it does surprise me how well, for the price point, the barrel is. And again, being made out of Zimac is not a big deal. And then, of course, we have the magazine here. All right, let's try a fully loaded up mag. Well, am I not surprised? We had to have one today, right, guys? Okay. One didn't go off there. We'll look at it and see if it was the cartridge or the gun. It's predominantly metal with a blued finish, although the base plate is kind of a rounded plastic polymer material. Interesting that it only has the cutout on one side, not both. Metal follower. And you know, throughout our day of light testing, it worked better than I thought it would. Sometimes these mags can get wonky with age, but it didn't seem to be sensitive even when loaded up all the way. Here are the two that failed to go off. They have been hit. You can judge if you think it's enough or not, but it's not like they're failure to hit it. Let's try these again. Of course, reassembly, pretty much exactly what you'd expect. Put your handle in first. It goes in quite similar to an AR. And then your bolt. Not a bolt carrier, just a bolt. I will say it will just fall out the back. It's not really retained by the handle, so if you have one, keep that in mind. And then just, you know, put your lower back on with our two non-captive retention systems. The two seemingly dud rounds back in the gun. Okay, so they went off that time. So you could say it was a light strike or maybe just a slightly hard primer. A word of advice with any of these Armi Jager guns, don't over tighten screws on them. While they do have a little bit of steel where it's really necessary, it's mostly the zinc, and you could over torque it, over stress it. And you don't need to make them dog tight anyway, just make sure nothing's walking off. But it's cool for what it is, and that's why they, you know, got started making replicas for the European market. They never were a military contractor. They did make some Colt single-action Armies and other Western-style guns at some juncture, but you know, their days were numbered. They pretty much went out of business by 1993. In fact, they sold some of their production tooling to Uberti in the early 21st century, and the company would change hands. The name's kind of still out there, but they're doing different things. Nothing dramatic happened. Not like what happened with Vector Arms. Looking for my mag. It's not my gun. It was mostly just the cost of labor in Italy was going up. The market for 22 trainers, 22 replicas wasn't as hot as it once was in Europe or America. And now they were having to compete with cheap labor and all those factories and needing work in Eastern Europe that opened up after the fall of communism. You know, time moved on. So these stopped coming into the country, although yeah, very few of this exact version ever came in. So that's why I wanted to share it with you in detail today to kind of make the definitive video on a odd duck gun. All right, the last couple in the box. That's a lot of fun, and you can turn your safety on even if the hammer is forward. Very European, and it is one thing I do like. It's actually quite quiet, no recoil, and I would imagine no flash, plus you do have a flash hider, just in case. All in all, pretty good run with just a couple of glitches there that could have been ammo, could have been gun, could have been a combo of ammo and gun. Well, back here to kind of wrap things up. It's a smooth throw, but of course it's quite short for what this is. Trigger is actually quite good on this. And while I don't mind testing it a bit, and I would worry less about breaking parts on the centerfire version, for example, on the rimfire 22LR, there are firing pin issues. That happens a lot. There are no spare parts out there for these. No surprise there. And as I mentioned earlier, it doesn't even take standard AR furniture. It's lookalike stuff. That's the norm for all this stuff. But, you know, it's a weird one. It's an oddity. 22LR makes sense, but I've had guys in the game for 40, 50 years that swore up and down they never imported the 32 version to America. So I thought sharing it with you fine folks would be of interest. I don't think there are any other videos of this on YouTube. If so, not many. Why not, you know? Like I said, they came in as a whole for about 15 years. But it seems like there was only one batch, maybe two of the 32s. A lot of them you see are 83 dated, but there have been people mentioning maybe 80, 81. Who knows? Wish we knew more, but a lot of those pre-computer records are just kind of lost to time now, and that's why I like doing videos like this, just to document that things existed while we can. And I'm a sucker for 32. I mean, with this long of a barrel, even though the gun's not all that heavy, I mean, there's nothing to it. The downside is the pretty wonky and low cap mag, though. But let me know, what kind of weird guns do you have? I always love it when I'm able to actually show you something new for the channel, even if it's not, strictly speaking, military. It's military adjacent. So yeah, I'd love to hear your comments and discuss this. As always, if you could, share with a friend, like the video. I guess there's that hype button. I don't have mobile, so I don't even know what that does. But you can also check us out on Patreon or do a super thanks here on YouTube. With that, this is Misha. Catch you very soon next time.